Welcome to the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. I want you to do me a big favor before you check out this clip. I want you to hit the like button. I want you to throw in a comment and make sure you're a subscriber to this channel. And then I want you to share this video with your friends. Help us defeat the algorithm. And then if you like this content and you appreciate this content, please head over to patreon.com/the Mike and JD Show and support the show. That is how we actually get funded to be able to do this. So we thank you very much for being here. And now enjoy the clip. So if you look at the cover art, the thumbnail that I created for this week, there's one Mike Santana, formerly of LAX, when he was in Impact Wrestling back in the day. One of the great Impact Wrestling tag teams of all time, in my opinion. And of course, he's a part of Proud and Powerful in AEW. And he recently his contract recently expired with AEW. And a lot of people had speculated where he would be going. And, whenever we first found out that he was getting released, he's been unhappy. He was unhappy in AEW about like a year and a half before he ended up leaving. We knew he was unhappy before he actually got injured. So before he got injured, I think his contract was up like later that year. I think I don't know. The timeline might be all screwy, but stick with me. So I want to say in 2022, before Blood and Guts, it had come out through Conan's podcast that Santana was unhappy in AEW, that he was not on good terms with Ortiz, and that he was looking to leave. And so we started speculating back then, well, if he leaves, would he come to, back then called Impact Wrestling, would he come to TNA? And and I think his contract was expiring later that year, and he ended up getting hurt. So he tore his ACL during Blood and Guts, and which extended out his timeline quite a bit, right? Because now he has to, be on the injured list, and then they extend your contract for entry time. So it's a typical thing that all promotions do. People don't like it, but it's just the way it goes. Like if you owe them a certain amount of dates, you got to fulfill the dates. Even if you get hurt, you just got to stick around. They're going to continue to pay you while you're hurt, but you have to, give them dates, right, when you get back. And so that's exactly what happened. So he comes back. He returns to the tag team of Proud and Powerful with Ortiz, but he's not happy about that. And then they end up doing a feud between Ortiz and Santana that only plays out on Rampage, which I thought was super weird because I felt like the promos and the heat was good and like they were being professional, but for some reason it was only playing out on Rampage. They just didn't want to give them a shot, and Santana ends up going over, and I think that was like October of last year, and that was the last time we saw Santana on actual television. He's just been working indies ever since. Well, about a month ago, his contract finally expired, and he had become a free agent, and he's been working every indie everywhere. He's one of those guys that's not resting on his laurels. He's out there hustling. And I have a lot of respect for people like that. And I'm going to talk about a couple more people that are like that here coming up soon. So Santana's leaving, and he did an interview earlier this week with Chris Van Vliet, which was like super emotional, by the way. It is emotional to me because, I also am an alcoholic, and I had to go to rehab. I went to rehab twice, actually. I didn't get it right the first time. So I ended up having to go back, and I've been sober a long time. And so when I see one of my brothers in sobriety, out there grinding, out there, staying sober and, spreading the message, spreading the joy, helping other people and getting their lives back on track, I got a lot of respect for that. So, people wonder why I'm such a big supporter of Steve Macklin. It's because, I see him, an enlisted military guy out there being successful, out there killing it. It warms my heart. Well, I have the same affinity for people that have gotten themselves sober. So he during that interview, he was asked about TNA, and he said everything was on the table. And then he just proceeded for the next like 2.5, 3 minutes to gush about how awesome the new TNA is. and about how like not only the crew that's in the ring, but the crew behind the scenes and all that, like just telling how great it was. And BQ did a really good video about that earlier this week. So I'm not going to do like a full play-by-play recap. I think BQ covered it pretty well, but it was pretty awesome. While he's talking, you're like, oh, he's coming back. But then that, there were some rumblings that maybe NXT would be interested, and I felt like NXT would be a good spot for him if he wanted to go the WWE route. But as BQ pointed out, and I don't want to just be like BQ Junior over here, which sometimes I am. He is like he's like a father figure to me. He's much older than I am. Shut up. he's probably gonna listen to this on his way back from Indiana. But so while you're listening, it's like, oh yeah, he's coming, he's wanting to come back. But I thought that he could go to NXT, and I thought he would do well in NXT. But as it was pointed out, like family is super important to him. So say he does go to NXT, and then eventually makes it to the main roster, the family time that he craves, that is so important to him, he might not get a lot of. Now, the modern WWE schedule isn't really that bad. It really isn't compared to what it used to be. But still, like if that's super important to you and you don't want to be traveling, Friday through Monday, and you really only have, part of Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to be home, that might not be the life for you. But if you go to TNA, which is what it's like. So I guess I buried the lead here. Sorry. Like I said, it's early. Sean Ross Sapp was on Fightful Select yesterday and said that TNA is bringing in Santana. So that's the big story that I have been trying to get to with this monologue. But so Santana coming home. He's coming home to TNA. And why would he want to come home to TNA? Well, there's lots of reasons. Why would he not go to WWE? I think he has an opportunity there, although that has not been reported. I think that he would be a guy that they would want, especially because they like going into Puerto Rico, right? So that there's one, but especially he's a really good talent. He's good. He's a good in-ring worker, and the guy can promo, and he's gotten himself to be in really good shape. So before, when he was wanting to go to TNA, like he was a beanpole. He was like skinny as can be. Well, he really worked hard. He put on some weight, and now he's shredding down. He looks really good right now. He looks exactly like the type of guy that WWE would want to bring in. He's not a short guy either. He's probably like close to 6 feet, and it looks like he's probably about 220 pounds right now. I might be giving him a little extra credit. I don't know, but he looks like he's pretty stout guy. But why would he want to come to TNA? Well, many reasons. The first one being like if he can make good money and only come to tapings, 1 weekend a month, maximum 2 weekends a month. I think that's an awesome schedule for him, and then he can work out the rest of his schedule on his own by going to all these other indies, and he can supplement his income through the independent scene. And that's why a lot of guys end up choosing TNA. A lot of times they choose TNA because they ain't got any other options. Like they want to be with the bigger companies. But then there's like guys like this. And I think Eddie Edwards is one of those guys. And, Moose is one of those guys. And a lot of guys just kind of like the schedule. If they can make decent money and then they can, supplement their income through the independent scene, they enjoy that. And they can they're their own boss at that point. They can kind of pick and choose where they want to go, which dates they want to take. They set their rate, all that stuff. And so that's probably number one. But number two, I think in TNA, Santana sees a path to being booked as a top guy. And if you're booked as a top guy in TNA, maybe one of the other companies might see you as something special, right? If they book you and like you end up getting yourself over and you redefine who you are, redefine your character, and you're able to do that in TNA, which they've oftentimes provided people the platform to be able to do that. There are people in AEW right now that really honed their craft in TNA, and same with WWE, but specifically like AEW, W. Morrissey would be one of those guys. Brian Cage, obviously, Deonna Purrazzo most recently. And so there's a lot of people that are like that. I think that he sees that and he's like, look, if I can go to TNA and I can get myself over, I can become a top guy there in a smaller promotion. That might jack my price up. A year, 2 years down the road when my contract expires, if he's on a contract, he might just be on a per date deal, which is what we've seen them offer people too. But say he's on a contract for 2 years, at the end of that 2 years, he's still a pretty young guy. And if you look at the top of the cards for WWE and AEW, a lot of it's very old. So it's not like he's going to age himself out anytime soon. So he can go grind in TNA for a couple of years and hopefully, increase his rate, increase what it would cost, and then he might be able to find a home in one of the bigger promotions, or he could just stay put. That is possible too, depending on what the company looks like at the time. Santana coming in, I think it's awesome. I think it's a home run for TNA. I think it's a home run for Santana. I think this is the perfect spot for him. I think, I was sad to see LAX go whenever LAX was feuding with the OGs, the original LAX, Homicide and Hernandez. When they joined up with Conan, right? Ortiz and Santana, they were with Conan. And Eddie Kingston shows up and he's got Homicide and Hernandez, the OGs. That hooked me with returning to Impact. Like Pentagon Jr. versus Sami Callihan is kind of what like sparked my interest, because I was a big Pentagon Jr. fan. I would go to like indie shows just to watch him. I was a big fan of Lucha Underground and him specifically. And but then I saw that feud play out, and I was like, yo, this is awesome. Now they did get a little hokey when they ran over a kid. I was like, okay, this is too much. But I was like, as a fan of the original LAX, and then to see the new LAX, I was like, oh wow, this is awesome. And then right after that, then they get into the feud with which one of my favorite tag team feuds of the last 10 years was LAX versus the Lucha Brothers. And if you go back to Rebellion from a few years ago, probably 5 years ago, I think 2019, in the Rebel nightclub, they main evented, they headlined that show, and I believe it's Full Metal Mayhem, and it was one of the goddamnedest matches you'll ever see. And that's kind of how both teams ended up leaving the promotion on their way out. Like I think Lucha Brothers left pretty quickly after that, and then LAX went to Mexico with TNA, and it was awesome. And then that's how they ended up departing the company. So they both acts ended up in AEW later that year with the debut of AEW. So he's got a lot of history in this company. A lot of the same people are probably still working behind the scenes. So it's really, even though Scott D'Amore's out, I think he's got a ton of connections to the promotion. So it makes all the sense in the world. I think this is the perfect hire. I loved it. And Lucha Doncic in the chat, always correcting me. Yeah. LAX feuded with the North on the way out. Yeah. So they had the big Lucha, the big Lucha Brothers feud. Lucha Brothers leave, and then they go and then they pass a torch off to the North, and I think they put it over the North, and the North became like, Ethan Page and Josh Alexander became like kind of the longest reigning tag champions, which I think they were helped a little bit by the pandemic because I think they were defending the title in Canada because they were stuck at one point. So, yeah. But yeah, awesome. Santana is coming home.